Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'm so honored to be joined by everybody's favorite guest.
I love that introduction. It makes me so happy.
The Dean of Student Engagement, Adrienne Thoman. Adrienne, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. It really is an honor to be on the Nightly News Podcast here, so I appreciate this opportunity.
Well, and as I usually do, I would like to tell you that it's an honor to be a part of the Pirate Life Podcast, Adrienne's podcast. You're now up to 81 episodes, which is pretty incredible.
I can't believe it.
I hope you have something special planned for episode 100 because it will be here before you know it.
It will.
I mean, if you think about it, there's 19 more. We get 2 in a month. You're looking at, I don't know, April, May of next year.
Wow.
Hey, maybe, I'll tell you what, I have a good idea. The Talk Like a Pirate Day, we might be able to, it might be a little bit after the 100, but we might be able to do like a live podcast. How cool would that be?
I would love that. That would be fun.
On the boat.
Oh, even better.
Yeah, that would be really neat. So yeah, stay tuned. But if you have not checked out Adrienne's Pirate Life podcast, please check it out wherever you find your podcast. It's a very, very interesting and fun and motivational and inspirational show. So please check out Adrienne and her fellow pirates and myself, producer Paul. Well, while we're here, this is our first podcast back for the fall term. Fall is always one that we are looking forward to very, very much, mainly because we get a lot of new students in the fall.
Oh, and it was so exciting at Move-In. We had 60 new students move onto campus. We had 15 returning students come back. It was aside from the rain, it was very exciting. And you can feel the energy, I think, a little bit more on campus this fall.
Without a doubt. And I know that it's, summer's always tricky because sometimes people take off and we don't get the same influx of new students as we do in the fall. So yeah, fall is always one that we are looking to reinvigorate campus, if you will. So what we're going to be talking about is several important events coming up in the next few weeks to make sure you're marking on your calendar. And we're going to start it all off with the CPC Film Series. That's going to be taking place on Friday, October 21st. Now, there's a couple of interesting things here I want to talk about. Of course, Dr. Flora Armetta will be on in just a little bit to talk to us a little bit more about the film series and a little bit about her background and why she picked the Knives Out film that she did. But
Such a good movie.
I've never seen it.
It's good.
This is, I believe, the third time that there's been a film that I've never seen. And when people first announced it, I'm like, I should probably watch that beforehand. And they're like, wait a minute, why would I want to do that? I like to be surprised, when I go in and watch these films. But I did want to point out that evening will be sponsored by the CPC Gaming Club and Central Penn esports teams. So please bring a couple of extra dollars in cash so you can buy a drink or you can grab some candy or snacks. All the donations go directly to those groups.
And can we give a shout out to our esports team because they're kind of killing it right now. They're doing great.
Absolutely. And we later in the term, we will have Michael Pico and Donnie Lewis, the coaches, as well as one of the esports players on the podcast. So stay tuned to that so we can keep an eye on how they're doing. I also, while we're talking about the Gaming Club, I just wanted everybody to save the date for an event that the Gaming Club is doing on October the 27th at 8:30, the Gaming Club Spooktacular. In looking at what that event is going to entail, they're going to have some VR headsets. They're going to basically set up a sort of a spooky game that goes along with the VR headsets. So it's something definitely worth keeping an eye on and marking on your calendar. So again, CPC Film Series will be October 21st with Knives Out. Of course, stay tuned for Dr. Armetta talking more about that, but also mark the Gaming Club Spooktacular on Thursday, October 27th at 8:30. Adrienne, another thing I wanted to talk about before we get to everybody's favorite segment, Adrienne's Featured 3, is the CPEC Job Fair. Now, Steve, again, will be on later this term to talk about the CPEC Job Fair and how it's going to change this year. But this year it's going to be on Wednesday, November 2nd from 11 to 2 at Adams Rickey Park. Now, what's really interesting about this, Adrienne, is this is a whole new type of job fair. Now, when I had Steve on previously, we went together to the Penn Ace Conference and presented at the Penn Ace Conference. The first time I've ever presented in person at a conference.
Oh, wow.
Yes, of course, I did present at the Popular Culture Association conference the last 2 years. Unfortunately, it was virtual. They're saying they're going to have it this year. So we're hoping to go
Hopefully.
to San Antonio. But this is one of the things that we actually kind of heard about in attending some of these other panels. So what the CPEC Job Fair traditionally has been, January, February, taking place over at the Radisson Penn Harris. They're trying to shake things up a little bit this year, and this is going to be something called a tailgate and relate, where it's going to be a bit more informal. It's going to have all of the same employers and the same job opportunities and things like that, but it's going to be outside, and it's going to have a tailgate theme.
That's fun.
What are your thoughts about that?
I know that the landscape of job fairs is changing, that the CPEC job fair itself, the attendance had been dwindling and they really wanted to do something to liven it back up. And I like this idea. I think it might be a new way. People are looking for different things now from their employers, and being able to connect with them in a less official kind of atmosphere, to be able to have the flexibility and the comfort of the Adams Rookie Park and the tailgate theme. I think it's going to be fun.
Oh, there's no question it's not going to be fun. I just wonder how the students sort of react, because especially students who have been to a job fair before, kind of, at least they know the formality that's expected. I wonder here if students are going to have questions about how to approach it in this way, because they've never done anything like this.
Oh, that's true.
So I guess if nothing else, what I would suggest is, hey, if you run into Adrienne around campus or you run into me, just stop and ask us, what we would recommend. Typically, I'd still probably recommend a business casual, maybe not the shirt and tie or very elaborate dress otherwise, but I do think that you still don't want to go in like a football jersey.
Right. I mean, you wear a polo, not a t-shirt, maybe. Nothing like super, super branded with slogans on it or anything like that, to look a little professional. So it can be casual, but still professional.
And I think, again, we can talk more about this with Steve later in the term, but I really think that's what they're going for. I think that, to your point, the job search now is a bit more informal and much less formal than it used to be. So I really think this is going to be something that is going to be really, really fun. And again, please mark that down, the CPEC Job Fair, Wednesday, November 2nd, with a rain date of Thursday, November 3rd, 11 to 2, because it is outdoors. So if it rains, they may move it. So keep those 2 dates open, and please feel free. Everything's free. If you need a ride from campus, reach out to Career Services at centralpenn.edu and you can get a ride. But otherwise, it sounds like a really cool event, and I'm really looking forward to taking my classes there. Well, all right, Adrienne, this is the time that everybody has been waiting for, and that is Adrienne's featured 3 events of the fall term. Well, we got to start with something that's very, very important, homecoming. So share with us a little bit more about the homecoming event.
Well, I'm cheating a little bit because my first of my feature 3 has like 4 events in it. But there's so much happening homecoming weekend. It really is an exciting time. Friday night, October the 14th, we're going to start with our home men's soccer game at Skyline Sports Complex. That starts at 7. We're going to cheer our hearts out for our Central Penn Knights. We're going to watch them win that game. And then we're going to come back, and then we'll have our homecoming dance. The theme is Light Up the Nights. So we're having students just, light up the night with their bling and glitter and glitz and glam. And we have this amazing DJ. So super cool. His name's Always Sunny. And he wears this big, glowy sun foam head.
Like marshmallow, except the sun.
What is marshmallow? I don't even know what marshmallow is.
It's a DJ that has a marshmallow on his head.
Oh, then I would say yes.
I think that's what they're trying to go for.
It's
you don't
super
know
cool.
Marshmallow?
No.
I don't even listen to this kind of music, and I know Marshmallow.
Well, we had Always Sunny at the pool party earlier this year. He was a big hit, did a great job, has a great, his music's awesome. So I think we're going to have a really good time.
Before we slide off of this into Saturday festivities, I want to give a quick shout out to the Knights men's soccer. When we are recording this, they're 5-6 on the season. And for an organization that hasn't played since 2019 due to the pandemic, I got to give them a ton of credit, including coming off 2 huge wins, one a home game on September 30th and one an away game at Penn State Mont Alto, 2 in a row. And if they have a decent run here to end the season, they definitely have a shot at going to the postseason. So we have to give Coach Brian Osborne a ton of credit, not only for the recruiting that he's done, but for the players out there on the field. I mean, This is incredible. And I'm sure that Coach Osborne will tell you, well, we probably could have won this game or won that game. But the fact that there is still, to this point, postseason aspirations for the Knights soccer team. This is just absolutely incredible, and we have to give them a ton of credit.
And we have 2 players ranked nationally.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
So definitely want to save the date for October 14th. That's Friday of homecoming weekend at 7 o'clock against Allegheny College of Maryland. That's at the Skyline Sports Complex. Now, Adrienne, you've been over there several times for the games. Tell me a little bit about what that game day atmosphere is like.
Oh, it's so fun because you get there and you have the big field. When we played under the lights this past game, it was the first time we had gotten to play under the lights. And it's just we had this beautiful sunset and just the sky's gorgeous and the field is there and the guys. It was just amazing. Plus, we're right across the river from downtown Harrisburg, so you have that beautiful scenery. It's cool.
Now, let me ask you, you're also in charge of selling the wares at the games, the food and whatnot. Do you need any help?
Always.
So if anybody out there would like to help Adrienne for these final few home games, please reach out to Adrienne Thoman at centralpenn.edu. Again, thank you so much, Adrienne, for being such an advocate for the athletics. And we're going to continue to expand athletics. I heard some rumors about maybe some new potential sports on social media recently. I'm not going to announce anything or let any cats out of the bag, but, we just got our volleyball team started, and they had their first season, looking at bringing in new sports. That's one thing here that we are absolutely doing is really investing in our athletics program, which I obviously, as somebody who is involved with athletics, I absolutely love.
Yeah, it's exciting to see.
All right, well, let's move to Saturday of homecoming then, Adrienne.
All right, so Saturday is the amazing tradition that is called the Fall Harvest Festival. So from 10 to 2, we have various vendors from the community that come to campus. We have food trucks. We're going to have some live music that's going to be there. I believe we're getting inflatables and bouncy houses and those kinds of things again. It is open to the public, so it really is designed to not only bring our campus community together, but the whole Summerdale, Enola community as well is encouraged and welcome to participate.
Just a couple of notes there. The band that's going to be playing is called Hold Fast, and any of you out there, it's this Celtic sort of rock, but almost like a funk. It's really, really unique.
Oh, that'll be cool.
And I think you're going to love it. I really do. I kind of know some of the music that you like. I really think that you're going to love this. And another thing that I would point out about the homecoming weekend specifically is, if you haven't yet, the Bridge podcast with Dr. Linda Fedrizzi-Williams, of which I'm also the producer, recently had Michael Fedor on to talk much more about the homecoming weekend. So if you're interested in any of these events whatsoever, please find the Bridge podcast with Dr. Linda Fedrizzi-Williams and listen to their most recent episode. But I don't want to steal any of your thunder, Adrienne. The biggest event, the cherry on top, comes last. Let's talk about it.
Burgers and Brews Music Festival. This is I would say it's kind of an adaptation. We tried it last year, so it's kind of a new adaptation of what had happened last year. It is the only thing that's ticketed, so you do need to buy a ticket to participate in this event. But what a lineup of you as a pirate podcaster. There's a band called Plunder and Lightning.
We need to get these guys on the Pirate Life
podcast.
So
excited about.
But so what's really interesting about the Burgers and Brew Festival is it is obviously last year the Proudest Monkey, who I still follow and love. I'm a huge Dave Matthews fan, and I just was absolutely enthralled with that concert. It was a beautiful day. They were amazing. And I was like, how are they going to top that? This tops it. The music lineup, the festival nature, the food, the drink, all of this is going to be so cool. So you're going to have Plunder and Lightning. Do you want to share with us a little bit more about Plunder? I know you kind of gave them a shout out, but you want to share a little bit more about them?
I'm just going to let the audience be surprised. I honestly have never gotten to hear them live, so it's going to be a new, exciting experience for me, too.
And then we are also going to be joined by Brett Alexander of the Badleys, which is, if you are from around this area, which I know you are, you probably played on the Bruce Bond show years ago. I mean, they were playing Badleys constantly. They had 2 big hits in the 90s, and they are nationally known. Now, it's not the entire band, which they are getting back together, by the way.
Are
and
they?
Doing some touring. Yeah, because I believe it's their 25th anniversary or something. But Brett Alexander will be playing some of those songs. And then the final bands. And again, if you're from this area, you know these guys, the Martini Brothers. And I got to be honest with you, these guys are one of the best local acts that you're ever ever going to see. I actually had the fortune, I put together a music festival last year with a couple of really, really, really awesome bands, and they were the headliner last year, and they were spectacular. I think everybody out there is going to love it. It's almost like a surf rock type of thing with the Martini Brothers, but they are just awesome, great energy, and I'm telling you, this is an unbelievable lineup. We start off with Plunder and Lightning. We have a nationally known act in Brett Alexander of the Badleys, and then, of course, local legends Martini Brothers. It's just, I was blown away when I saw this. So I really think that they're going to top Proudest Monkey from last year. So I have to calm myself down. I'm getting so excited. So that's going to put a little bow on Homecoming. All right, Adrienne, how about event number 2?
So we have a comedian coming to campus. On November the 1st, we have Sam Morrison coming. We actually got to hear him, a little bit of his bit when we were at the APCA conference when Brian Starhucker and I went, which was so much fun. And we got to hear him a little bit, loved him. He's real funny. And we're excited to bring him to campus, hopefully get some laughs.
Comedy is one of the things that I love so much. Anytime I'm anywhere and I have the chance to go to a comedy show, I love to go. And this is going to be really fun. I know that you've had some excellent comedians in the past, and you get a really, really nice crowd for it. So we are definitely looking forward to seeing Sam Morrison on.
He describes himself as just another hack, NYC-based gay diabetic widow comedian.
Interesting way to
that is
describe yourself.
His little bio.
So again, save the date for Sam Morrison, the comedian, on November 1st at 6:30 in the theater. All right, we have one more event on Adrienne's featured 3. Let's hear about it.
Final event is going to be, I think it might be our final Project Paul drive-in drop-off donation event. It's going to be October 22nd from 10 to noon, doing a mini condensed one. We're not quite sure how cold it's going to be, but hoping to, during that 2 hours, collect some donations for the animals that we are trying to support throughout 2022.
In Project Paw, just for those of you who don't know, this is part of our CPC Gives Back initiative. In years past, we have tackled food insecurity and housing insecurity in our local area, specifically working with groups in counties that we serve. I believe 7 different counties that the majority of our students come to, and it's a way for us to ask for monetary donation, item donation, and also a way for us to get involved with some of these organizations. Now, Adrienne, I know that we still have a couple of months. Are you planning on volunteering outside of the drive-in drop-off at any of these sites?
I would love to. I have to see what opportunities are there, but I definitely would love to.
Well, and just as a side note, we are going to be going over to the Humane Society. So if you are interested in that, once we go over for the first time, I will forward you all the information.
Yeah, keep me posted.
And they have some really, really awesome opportunities there at the Humane Society. So first, let's give a quick recap in chronological order. It's all going to kick off the big events this term with our homecoming weekend that is going to start this weekend. Friday night is going to be soccer at 7 p.m. at the Skyline Sports Complex. It's going to be followed up by the homecoming dance. The soccer game starts at 7, the homecoming dance at 10. As the calendar flips to Saturday, Fall Harvest will be here on campus, a free family-friendly event from 10 to 2. You can see band Hold Fast, as well as vendors, food trucks, and a variety of other things. And that's going to be followed by the crown jewel of homecoming weekend, the Burgers and Brews Festival, with Plunder and Lightning, Brett Alexander of the Badleys, and of course, the Martini Brothers. Another event that we were talking about is going to take place on October 21st, Friday. That's a CPC Film Series with Dr. Flora Armetta presenting Knives Out. Of course, that is going to be sponsored by the CPC Gaming Club and the Central Penn Sports Team. Keep an eye out, though, on October 27th for the Gaming Club Spooktacular that's going to be taking place at 8:30 p.m. We also have the potentially final drive-in drop-off event that's going to take place on October 22nd from 10 a.m. to noon. That's going to be in the parking lot across from the ATEC building. Next up will be Sam Morrison, the comedian that's going to take place in the theater on November 1st at 6:30. And last but not least, the CPEC Job Fair that's going to take place on Wednesday, November 2nd from 11 to 2 at Adams Rickey Park. Sound like a plan?
That sounds like a plan.
All right. Well, Adrienne, as always, it is my absolute pleasure to get to not only have you on this show, but to continue working with you and the Pirates. It's always a fun time, and I always enjoy the time that we get to spend together on our show.
We appreciate it.
Cool. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. Stay tuned for Dr. Armetta. She's going to come up in just a minute to talk more about the CPC Film Series. So stay tuned.
Hey guys, it's Community Relations Coordinator Curtis Volker, and you're tuned in to the Nightly News Podcast.
Well, welcome everybody to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'm so honored to be joined by Dr. Flora Armetta. Dr. Armetta, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Professor Miller.
Oh, it is my absolute pleasure. So what we're going to be talking about today is the upcoming CPC Film Series. It's going to take place on Friday, October 21st in the Capitol Blue Cross Theater. Dr. Armetta will be presenting the film Knives Out. So obviously we want to kind of start there. Why this film?
Well, I saw this film right when it came out. I've always loved murder mysteries. I've been a reader since I was very little, and one of the sort of genres that I stuck with the most was the murder mystery. I started with sort of Agatha Christie and some of the classics, and then really branched out and now have favorites in pretty much all the genres, except when you get into horror, I'm not as much of a fan. But I was teaching a course on mystery and detective fiction. Thank you, Central Penn, for allowing me to do that. And so I felt that I had to see this film, and I loved it and incorporated it into the film and into the course. And there's so much in it that sort of speaks to some of the classic elements of, of really an Agatha Christie murder mystery, but also sort of updates things and brings them into the 21st century and sort of plays with some of the, expectations.
Now, where did the inspiration for this film come from? Now, I will tell everybody that this is directed and written and directed by Rian Johnson. If you're not familiar with that name, you may be, and you may have seen one of his films. He actually produced the 8th episode of Star Wars, The Last Jedi, which is, at least for the most part, kind of agreed upon as the best of the new trilogy.
Oh, good.
Of course,
I wasn't aware.
Of course, I'm sure there are some people out there that are like, what are you talking about? It's one of the worst.
You're going to get letters from fans.
That's the Star Wars fan culture for you. Nobody can really agree on anything, except for pretty much everybody agrees, except for me, of course, that the last one is the worst, which I adamantly disagree with, but that's a different podcast. This idea, so we were kind of chatting off air, and one of the reasons I kind of enjoy that you're doing this film is because this is a film that's original. Mm-hmm. And we were kind of just talking about how really unique that is in today's day and age that we're getting to watch original films. So what was it about? Like, do you have any idea about the background about how this film was created? Is it, maybe inspired by other types of films? Have you ever read into that?
Oh, that's a great question. And I totally agree with you on the one hand that it's original, meaning it's not part of a series, it's not part of a franchise, it isn't.
But we'll get to that.
Yet, sadly. On the other hand, you could argue, all good stories are true and all good stories are already there for us in some place. I don't know. I haven't done a ton of research into what the director was trying to specifically, individually, personally build in this story. But I do know that he adapted it from a very sort of classic template where you take a group of characters, you essentially create a sort of locked room scenario where it could only have been one of X number of people who sort of committed this crime. And then you play out usually an eccentric detective, and this features at least one and then arguably a couple others who sort of join him as well. And then you sort of create these different scenarios within the story, and then within this sort of locked environment, eventually something's going to happen that we have to find out. Who did the crime.
Sort of reminds me of like a murder mystery dinner in a way.
It's exactly like that.
Have you ever done one of those?
No, I haven't. I did look into, they actually host things like many different cities have a murder mystery game where you can it's almost a little terrifying, but you can sign up with strangers and sort of go and play a murder mystery. There are so many pop culture events that are based on this very kind of scenario. And it comes from the golden age, the 1930s and 40s, this sort of idea that one detective will sort of find out the truth in the end.
You know, it's really interesting that you talk about this because part of what I'm actually getting into for my dissertation is I'm actually going to be looking at genre from the Christmas genre. However,
great.
to your point, one of the things that I think is important, a point that you just made, is that it's out of this murder mystery template. And I don't want to speak for you, so please correct me if I'm not kind of hitting what you're getting at. This is sort of these are what you would call genre conventions, right? So this murder mystery template, when somebody walks in, these are the types of things that they're expecting. So we're talking about its originality, but I also want people to understand that even the most original things will still represent the genres that they were written for.
That's absolutely right. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make the point that it sounded like on one hand we were arguing that it was original, but on the other hand we were arguing that it wasn't. So I just wanted to clarify for everybody that it's fine for an original piece to still reflect the genre that it's a part of.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of the brilliance of what this does. You can call it a formula if you want, but there's enough room within the conventions to make all kinds of unexpected plays, to take a tradition with a certain type of character and bring it into contemporary concerns and issues. And certainly the director does that with a number of things, and I'll look forward to talking about that more with the audience. But I mean, for example, those original sort of British classic whodunits often played with the question of class. You know, who's in charge here? What element of English society is on top and gets to make the calls? What are the sort of supposed dangers that the lower classes represent? And what will happen when we figure out who was the murderer to our perception of this question of, like, are we safe? And so this director sort of borrows from that, but brings it into contemporary questions around race and immigration. There is some class as well, but it's much more sort of questions around race and ethnicity. So it's really, it's beautifully done.
You're clearly very knowledgeable. Obviously, you know, being from an English background, you're probably more on the literature side. However, it seems like you love film as well.
I do.
Tell me a little bit more about how you got into enjoying film, maybe what one of your first memories with film was. I mean, share with us.
Oh, I love that question. I actually did a little prep for this because I was thinking I have to be able to tell a good story. The very first film I saw ever was the 1970s. Yes, I'm dating myself and I'm fine with that. Original Superman, starring the amazing, Christopher Reeve. And I fell madly in love with him. And he, I think what I loved about that story, I was really little. So I think I just loved this kind of other world that's created. And we know that we love that about films in general, that you can sort of escape into a place that is not your home territory. I've loved stories my whole life. I did love reading. I also majored in acting for a time and sort of enjoyed being involved in storytelling from that perspective. And now I teach literature and writing. So I feel like there's this sort of essentializing element around storytelling. But I'm also a really visual person. When I was also very little, my parents allowed me to have the Disney Sleeping Beauty story, the classic, at a birthday party. And I just remember falling in love with the way the animation was so visually effective. There's this moment where the evil witch is walking up the stairs, leading Sleeping Beauty toward the terrible tower where the spinning wheel is, and we all know she's in danger. And the camera zooms in, the animation zooms in on her cloak, just sliding up the stairs, and it looks like a snake. It's terrifying, and it's so beautifully done. And so I just love these sort of otherworld visual opportunities that we have in films, too.
I remember, and I've actually told this story on our former student Leslie Heimbaugh and I had a podcast last year, and we had a podcast about kind of how we got into movies. So I do encourage you to check out Nights at the Movies. Those podcasts are still all up on the Nightly News YouTube channel. But the of course, I watched some like comedies and kind of stupid movies, when I was younger. But the first time that I ever remember a movie walking in and then walking out, like, what in the world did I just see, was when I saw Pulp Fiction. And I hope that my mom didn't hear this, but I actually snuck in because when it came out in 95, I was 14. And so I bought a ticket for another movie, and I'm like, I got to go check out this Pulp Fiction. And I walked out of that movie and I was like, what in the world did I just watch?
Absolutely.
Same thing happened to me when I watched Fight Club a couple of years later. And it were those two movies, when I think about myself and the passion that I have for film even to this day, it's all about these really, really talented directors and writers who are able to your point, transform you into this. Even though Fight Club and Pulp Fiction both existed in the United States, it's just this world, this subculture that you're really immersing yourself in, that's just artfully crafted, that just, it's touching is maybe that's not the right word, but walking out of these films, I will never forget thinking to myself, what in the world did I just watch? And then trying to process it. And now I'm to the point where I'm watching films and I'm going home and watching more YouTube videos, spending more time on watching YouTube videos, trying to figure out and analyze these films. And that's something that I just really enjoy.
Absolutely. I love that too. And you're talking from the sort of the director auteur sort of the skills and the technologies and the sort of unusual camera angles. I'm sure, I imagine you know a lot more about that than I do. I think for me, if you're going to talk about a movie that just blows your mind, when I saw Saving Private Ryan in the theater, I really didn't know. I knew nothing about war, it would be fair to say. I knew sort of, why did we get into World War II, but I really didn't know anything about it. And there were already all these advanced sort of reviews from veterans who said it's the sound that takes you to this place more than any other element in the film. So that film was really powerful for me. There's some sentimentality in it. We can make all kinds of arguments and critiques around, what is the narrative and who's being valorized, and set all that aside. There was this incredibly powerful opportunity to, at least in a little tiny way, experience something that I guess you would have to say I'm extremely grateful I've never had the opportunity to experience in person. But I walked away just appreciating the magnitude of this event and the people who were, who fought for the United States, and just the horror of sort of that daily war experience. And I do also love another thing that I just enjoy, not only as a former theater student, but just because it's so fun, is acting. And it's sort of, if you're going to say maybe you're a director buff, I'm an acting buff. And there are certain actors that I don't care what the story is. I'll just see them do it.
Who?
So,
Name names.
Yeah, of course. Idris Elba is, I think, an absolute genius. I've never seen him make a misstep. I wish he were out there more. They were talking about him as the new Bond for a while, and apparently he's not going to do it, and my heart is broken. I think Toni Collette, actually, who's in Knives Out, she's not, I don't have a top 10 list. I think there are so many actors that we could just talk about their brilliance, but she's really incredible. She has a range, and she doesn't fit into a type. I think she makes every character she plays, she turns that character into the one that only she could have played. And I think she's just incredible.
To your point, I actually taught a class, Selected Topics, where we investigated genre more, but we also talked early in the term about what makes a good actor or actress. And one of the biggest and most important things is what scripts they decide to do.
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of times if people aren't necessarily respected as a really solid actor, it's because maybe they're just taking films that don't have a lot of depth to their character.
Right.
And so it is a testament maybe part of the reason Idris Elba didn't want to do the Bond films is because maybe the scripts weren't where they needed to be for him to be able to portray that character appropriately. Unfortunately, sometimes, and probably in a lot of cases, it is a job, and they are trying to make money.
Right.
And so, if they get an offer for a couple of $1 million to do a crappy movie,
Right.
they may do it.
And I guess I would also say you can have a crappy movie and still have a genius acting turn. And people will rally around that portrayal, whether the story was spectacular or not.
Well, let's circle back to Knives Out. So I would just love to know. Now, of course, everyone's going to come to see you Friday, October 21st from 6 to 9 p.m. in the Capitol Blue Cross Theater. Doors open at 6 o'clock, and you'll be going on around 6:30 for your presentation before we screen the film. Yeah. So can you give us a little preview of what you're going to be sharing with us that night?
Yeah, absolutely. I will be introducing a little bit of what I've already talked about, that sort of sense of what are we expecting from what is a quote-unquote classic murder mystery? Why did they even arise as a genre? There's an amazing history to this, the sort of Edgar Allan Poe and Sherlock Holmes, and then this kind of story is very different than those earlier ones, but you can see little pieces of the ideas that appear in those earlier stories coming out in the sort of conventions that arise in what they now call the golden age of mystery. But I'm also going to talk about the acting. I'm also going to talk about the contemporary issues, the questions around wealth and privilege and immigration, and also that sense of the question of, how do we actually find out what is true? One of the things that I love about a mystery is that there is an answer. And I'm a humanities person, so I also love a good conversation where you don't walk away with the one right answer. But there's something really marvelous about a story that says, and in the end, we know what happened, and this is what it was. And I love sort of that sense of piecing together a puzzle. A mystery doesn't always work like that, but this one certainly does. And that sense of sort of allowing the audience to be a detective and some of the emotion that comes in for an audience, and this sort of question of, are you satisfied? So I want to talk about all these ways of, asking what's good or what's valuable about a mystery.
Just as a quick side note, Knives Out made $311 million worldwide at the box office and is ranked a 7.9 on IMDb, which we were actually talking about that earlier. That's a very, very, very good rating for IMDb when even your top 100 films of all time are in the, even number 100, I believe, was an 8.2. So you're talking about a very, very highly regarded film. Yeah. Definitely got some Oscar nominations along with it. So this is going to be a really fun evening. It's a great film. Probably, in fact, it is the most modern film that we've ever shown in the film series. So hopefully that's going to bring some people out. Maybe it's still fresh in some people's minds. But we learned something before this podcast that we're going to share with you here really quick. So we were just doing a little research, kind of poking around IMDb a little bit, and we saw something that said Knives Out 3. And you were like, wait a minute, there's not even a Knives Out 2. How's there a Knives Out 3? Well, apparently, this December 23rd, Knives Out 2 is going to be coming out on Netflix, which you were a little upset by. Tell me why did you have that reaction?
I was, and maybe it's a knee-jerk reaction. I do understand sort of the pull of the franchise, right? And so any big movie now that is popular, immediately the directors and the producers are looking for, how can we do it again? How can we get the same group back for round 2 and more money? I get it. And sometimes a franchise is trustworthy. I literally actually can't think of one right now that I would call trustworthy, but we could talk about that. It's just not coming to mind. But there's also this sense that a story can be valuable on its own, and we don't need to turn it into a series to sort of put the seal of approval on it. And I do think that there's a certain point where, because whoever's making money from the film is working so hard to get the same hooks that worked the first time in the following stories, there's this sort of retread, eat the same old food, but this time it tastes a little less fresh feeling.
What an analogy.
Is just unfortunate. And it kind of breaks my heart to see that happen. This movie was a splash, as you said, and sort of unexpectedly successful. So I'm sad to see people just be like, all right, let's Hollywood it up.
Gosh, you're speaking my language here, and I've shared this on the Nights of the Movies podcast, but one of the biggest issues that I see, especially post-pandemic cinema, is that a lot of these original films that are standalone films that were just released for their own merit aren't being made anymore.
Right.
And it's these type of films, and again, not to take anything away from Knives Out, it only had a $40 million budget. I mean, we're not talking like, a Marvel movie with a $300 million budget here. I mean, it didn't have a huge budget. But at what point do we say, if these folks, and I believe they are with their best of intentions, if they are artists, at what point do we stop this whole commodification of this intellectual property? I mean, that's my question right now. I mean, hey, to be honest, I'm sure this will be fine, and we're not. Especially because we've never seen it and it's not even out yet, so we can't really judge. I don't think we're saying that we're looking for this particular one not to hit the mark. Maybe it will, but I think the bigger and broader issue is what is happening to film in general, especially theatrical releases.
Right.
That it's all sequels, remakes. I mean, the Top Gun remake this year, I don't know if you saw it.
I haven't seen it, but I heard a lot about it.
But it was the same plot, almost beat for beat to the original one, and it was fun for what it was, but it wasn't unique, it wasn't super memorable, maybe to a newer generation,
right?
But that's what's so frustrating about film today, is that really you're not getting anything original, or very little original, even though we've got all of these different platforms to watch media, watch content,
right?
And the look on your face when we discovered there was a sequel, it was priceless. So, but hey, we can save that discussion for another time, and maybe maybe you want to address that a little bit in your presentation. Maybe we can chat about that at some point. But
absolutely.
Flora, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so looking forward to the CPC Film Series. We're hoping for a great turnout. Fall is usually our largest turnout. I know I already have a variety of people coming from my classes. I'm sure you're going to get some of your students to come too. And just looking forward to a wonderful free evening on Friday, October 21st at 6 o'clock.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Paul. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Oh, and we certainly hope to have you on again, CPC Film Series or not, because we could go on all day about this topic, trust me.
Let's do that.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. I want to thank Dr. Flora Armetta for joining us today to talk about the upcoming October 21st CPC Film Series. I did want to just make one final plug here. It is going to be sponsored by the CPC Gaming Club and the Central Penn Esports team. They're going to have food for donation, movie-themed snacks, popcorn, drinks, so bring a couple of extra dollars in cash so you can have some of those. But they're also, Flora, going to be bringing 2 retro arcade machines along with
brilliant.
them. So make sure that you get there when the doors open so you have some time to play some Pac-Man or Space Invaders before the show.
Absolutely. We'll see you there, folks.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. I want to thank Dr. Flora Armetta for joining us today. We'll see you again next time.